quorum.
Do we know if Mark is coming tonight?
No, nobody, I don't know if the ladies are coming. We ready?
We're ready.
Okay. All right, I'd like to call this meeting together, the 16th, and start presenting. We have 4 members, 3 members at the meeting in person, and then we have Ulick. Ulick, you have to put the camera on, the video, in order to be considered here. So, have to get his camera on.
Somehow, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Is your video on?
Unable to start video. Question is why?
Catherine, do you have to open that video? No.
Good.
So, try now. That's not good.
Hold on.
Usually it comes up, participants, and then,
There he is.
there he is, okay, good evening.
Yeah, so you actually need to allow me to start my video.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, well, we're gonna start. It's a little after 7:30, so we have a couple of things, some important things. First of all is to review the minutes of September 18th. Any objections by anybody have on that one that we have?
Nope.
I think, make a motion to, where is that?
Pass it. Make a motion to pass the minutes.
Okay, second it then. Okay, and we vote, and it's, okay, 4-0 that they're approved. Yeah. All right, now, the main part of this meeting, since we don't have any wetlands, we can get into some serious business, which is reviewing the decisions by the planning board. This was really the first meeting that they had where, since it's been turned over to them and taken away from the town board, was the October 10th meeting.
All right.
And I didn't feel it was too successful of a turnover, but that's my personal opinion. And I don't know what the committee thinks. Thought that when they got into the property for the 169 Ram Island Drive, well, first of all, the 7 Cheekwood wasn't even broadcast the vote. I thought that was ridiculous that we even considered that as a full meeting, but I understand the town board, Jerry and the town board said, well, it was a meeting, and, and the planning board sort of said, well, yeah, we had the meeting, and their attorney said, you don't have to have the open Zoom. And Kimberly Ray really raised us think about that, and I don't know what's going to happen with that meeting.
Was it all at the same meeting? They did all these at the same meeting? So did they start early or something?
My understanding, wasn't it that they lost contact for part of that meeting?
Yeah, you couldn't get started.
Okay.
You couldn't get started.
So the correct thing, and I think, I don't mean to be out of order here, but
No, that's all right.
the correct thing that I think should have happened, and it would happen in this meeting, if we lost contact with Pam or Lori. When you got them back, you say, listen, we did lose contact, but we did we waited 5 minutes. We didn't know whether we were gonna get you back, but we did take a vote on it. Here's how the vote, and here's how the discussion. And then if the chairperson could just kind of, of the committee would just say, the vote went 4-1.
Whatever.
The one dissenting was Dan, and Dan, but you might want to say why you voted against that, just so that people on the Zoom can hear you. You state your one, and that's important. It's recorded, it's part of the minutes. The people on the Zoom then know what, who voted against it and why they voted against it. So you fill them up, and then hopefully, the meeting continues.
Right.
It doesn't take a lot of time.
No.
It takes a couple of minutes to take corrective action. And there are times at a town board meeting, I've been doing this for 8 years, so we've lost contact. So we either stop filming totally and wait till we get it back, or if we do continue, somebody has to take the note, what time we lost contact, what time we got it back, what items we discussed. It's,
Well, I don't think,
especially when there's votes.
they didn't know, I don't think, the planning board, that they lost contact.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. So that's another,
Until the audience brought it up.
okay.
And so it's a different thing. They could have restarted and said, oh, okay, but, it was the audience bringing it up, and I don't think they thought it was official, but I think that's the only way. It's not a recorded meeting as far as I'm concerned. It was cut off. And the attorney for them, who said that she said you could be in person. It doesn't mean that the Zoom has to be on. And, the idea was, no, it was an open meeting that you could be in person or Zoom.
Right.
So I disagree with the attorney, 100%.
I just think in fairness to people that take the time and the effort, these are citizens that are not on a committee, they take the time and effort to Zoom in. They obviously are interested in a topic or two that it's on the agenda, that if they should happen to miss that, we kind of owe them a little explanation of, to say that, we don't have to do something.
Right.
Because the law says you don't have to do it, that's a cop-out, in my opinion.
It's illegal.
It is.
You have to, I'm sorry, Erwin.
It's particularly concerning when it is a topic that was by no means uniformly agreed upon. I mean, there was a lot of objection to that project, and it just has a whiff of, we're trying to avoid the discussion and we're just pushing it through. That's what it looks like from the outside. It loses credibility, not just for that committee, but for the entire town.
Yes, I agree.
Well, they didn't know that we voted 6-0 against it?
That was the other one. That was the 169. Yes, and that was an error that we.
Well, I mean, the Chequet one too, same thing.
But no, I think they knew we did.
Oh, okay.
But they were finished with that hearing
Right.
before we got video back. So we don't know what they knew.
Oh, okay.
They didn't. But no, we voted against that one too, 6-0. But we'll get into the other one, the 169, they said they didn't have the denial, that we denied and he didn't. I mean, but it's in our minutes.
Right.
Meeting. He could look up the minutes of the meeting online and you see his denial, 6-0.
Right.
So,
Well, is this just a communication? Is this something that we should make sure we get?
well, I guess so. I guess it's my fault or.
No, not your fault. I'm just saying,
Well, I should review, I guess, when
like it's not,
Catherine sends it to them.
do they have to actually, respond to what we say?
Yes,
Okay.
have responded and they talk about it and they don't have to take our advice.
Right.
But they have to discuss it and that they have those comments.
Right.
And at
So,
that
so why
160
did they proceed if they knew they didn't have the comments? Is it purely on us
No,
that they get it?
no.
Or
No,
is
they
it a two-way
had the
street?
comments, but they didn't have the denial at the end, 6-0, they vote on a piece of paper, and Ian had it, he says, I don't see this on a piece of paper, and he was correct, it wasn't on a piece of paper, but it was a clerical error, come on, you can look it up in the minutes, it's just.
Howard, just out of curiosity, did a list the reasons why the vote went down 6-0?
Why?
Yes.
We had the 6 items.
Okay,
We had
so
the items.
that's just as important as the final vote. So if something goes down 4-2 or 6-0, and we started emphasizing this more as a town board, not just for this committee or planning board, but all committees. And I think it was Amber that brought it up. She said, listen, when we take a vote, particularly when the vote is not unanimous, and there's a split vote, again, 5-1 is a vast majority, 83% of the people say yes, well, 16.23% say no, but it's nice to see that the person is heard and why it was heard. So sometimes, and it happened, I can't even remember when it happened, that one vote that was a dissenting vote was so powerful that it impacted the five of us to not accept the five positive votes. And we asked the liaison to take it back and discuss it further, or get further clarification on something. But, so, I mean, it's important, a dissenting vote should always be heard.
Yes.
And
Has to
and the reason why it was heard. It doesn't have to be, 10 paragraphs. It can be done in a couple of sentences, pinpointing the reason why I could not support the motion. And the person just writes, a line or two, that's it.
So probably what should have been done was we should have said, unanimously voted against the application 6-0 because of these items.
Six,
And that way it's there in the beginning instead of waiting until the end for the vote thing.
yeah, well, we transition of clerks and stuff.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying that would
It was just
just show you how everybody felt at the.
I told him that on the meeting, I
Right.
said, we denied it 6-0. And he said, well, it doesn't say this on a piece of paper I got you.
And there were pretty easy things to change, as I recall. They weren't like major things.
No, the only thing was keeping out of the 75
Yeah,
with the
which
garbage
is,
cans.
they've had plenty of room. They had plenty of room.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were pinching
Well,
corners.
they haven't voted on it.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I don't think our things were out of line for,
All
They
right.
had, the hearing is closed on that.
yeah.
I did have,
But they didn't make a
private, this is obviously, it's a public meeting and people are on the air.
Yes, sure.
But the chairman of the planning board did call me to discuss this. He said he discussed it with you, Howard. Did he discuss it with you?
He discussed the reason, he said it was a written error.
Okay,
in
all
the
right,
code.
okay, all right.
And I asked him, I said, at that meeting, I said, who said that? That's his opinion. The town board didn't change the code, and the town board, you're a part of.
I'm absolutely.
I'm not picking on you.
No, I listened to him very carefully about what, his rationale, but I did say that the CAC specializes in one thing, conservation, and we hone in on environmental issues. That's our focus. Planning board, that's one of their many focuses. So our main focus here is to focus in on these kinds of issues. And I said, I realize we're out of the loop, in terms of, however, I still report to the town board on our findings. I would like the planning board to make sure that you go through the applications as seen by the CAC, what some of their concerns were. Again, it's advisory to the planning board, and the planning board, is making a decision here. But I don't know what the exact words that I used, but I didn't want the CAC to become an impotent type of organization where we're sitting here spinning our wheels, spending time to come up with concrete recommendations, and the recommendations are not heard. That's all I asked for.
Yeah.
And
Do we-
that's just, I'm sorry?
Yes,
Do we have anywhere the reasons why the majority of the planning board approved 7 Chickwit?
no, because that
Paper,
whole
in the
portion
paper,
was.
I only read that we all reading the code wrong. That's a bit rich from.
Well, no, I haven't seen the written resolution. I don't know if it has to be there somewhere. We always had a written resolution when the town board did it, that it was in the paper listed, the resolution. But when the resolution it's the final thing, then it's too late. The hearing was closed anyway on Cheekwood. And it was also on this 169 Ram Island. And, but during the resolution stage, we used to ask the town board, well, why? What was your reason for not approving that? And they would come back and tell us, and that's fine. We don't mind, it's a discussion, it's good.
Howard, I want to remind the three of you, and Ehrlich, you as well, four of you. And when this decision was made, I want to say 5 months ago, to turn the powers of the wetlands applications over to the planning board, that I was the one that sat in that chair up there and said, I expect this to be a trial period. That I want some type of 6-month trial period where there's some review process at the end of it. Is it working? Is it not working? Does it need to be tweaked? Is there minor tweaking that needs to be done? So I still throw that out on the table. I did remind my colleagues of this last meeting or two about the idea that I went into this with the idea that this was going to be a trial period. And the reason for that, and I think a lot of my fellow colleagues agreed to this, there was tremendous resentment, resistance to doing this in the community.
Yes.
So we're elected officials, you know, I'm an elected official. And when you see a wave of people that are concerned about taking this authority from, you know, from the town board to just the planning board, there was a lot of opposition, a lot of things written in the paper about it. And I don't say, you know, whether it's overwhelming or not, but enough of a concern that it demanded a trial period in my mind to say, what's a good amount of time? I think 6 months is a good amount of time where you're not bound to do this for 6 years or 60 years. You try it for 6 months, it's either working, great, it's not working, go back, or does it need to be tweaked? That determination, I would like to see us stick with that. The time for that was, the end time that I thought was happening is in November, which is next month. You know, which will be 5 or 6 months into the process. Let's look at the process. Let's see if the process is working. It's got to fall in one of 3 categories. Say, okay, it's dead in the water, or it needs to be tweaked. So that's really where I'm coming from. I know as one of 5 members of the town board, you know, I realized I'm on my way out, but on the same token, I think this is a very, very important issue that needs to be carefully looked at before you solidify it and say, we're bound to do this for, you know, for eternity, you know, so to speak.
I understand what you said there, but there was a lot of opposition to that, and there was tremendous. I didn't hear anybody saying it was the right way to go, by the way. But there
What
might
were the
have been.
reasons, Howard?
Yes.
What were the reasons that people objected?
Oh, the reason why it went to the planning board?
No, the reason why people objected to move it to the planning board.
Oh, because we thought, my thought on it was that if we have the board, they are the people that nominate and designate, approve the people for the planning board and the CAC, all the committees. And so they're responsible, and if we don't like their decisions at the next election, we can get rid of them.
Correct.
But the planning board is there until, I don't know how we get rid of them. I guess we could just, I don't know. I mean, now that they're in charge, I don't know if you can change it. I mean, I know what you said, and you said it before, that, you know, there should be a time period. That's not, I don't think, recorded as being a way that you're going to look at it. I don't think that that's an official thing coming up in the November meeting. I just don't think so.
I'm, as I told you, I'm not lying to you, I'm not lying, it's an open meeting. It's what I reiterated, you know, to my colleagues several times now since that time. And I'm pretty much looking, and I'm not looking to, you know, I need to be convinced, you know, beyond the shadow of a doubt. That's something, this is an important decision.
I think,
So it's, you know, I need to be convinced it's definitely working. We don't need to tweak it. It's definitely not working. It can't be tweaked. Or if it is tweaked, what things need to be tweaked in order to make it work? And by the way, if that needs, then I'd go another 3 months with that adjustment. I'll be out of office, but there'll be a new town board here. Let the new town board come in and make a judgment for themselves. Do they think it's working or it's not working? You know, it's just something that I think it's a step-by-step process.
Right.
We're not looking, it's not a power play. It's about doing the right thing and making the right calls. And this committee sees it so much, I don't want to say so much different. It does see it differently because it focuses in on this one strong, and the community is now echoing that the CAC, the value of the CAC should be increased because there are a lot of environmental issues that need to be addressed. tree cutting, all the little stuff that we're involved with, it needs to be looked at. I mean, they want the WAC was in here talking about fertilizers and pesticides and things like that today. So everybody's looking to improve the environmental conditions here on the island. So the pendulum is swinging in that direction, and if it swings in that direction, all the committees have to get on board, because this is the vision of the people. Not the supervisor, not the town board. This is where the people of Shelter Island want to go. They want to see a safer, cleaner. How do you do that? You ask them, what are you willing to support? And you listen, and you enact.
Well, it seems like the environmental part of it should be the first consideration before anything else anyway.
Right.
And if it's not even considered,
Well, they consider, I mean, the planning board has good individuals on it, but
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying,
They know.
I'm just saying that, the reasons were because of the size of the lot we
Wetland.
gave, yeah. And that's a Swift's project. I mean, it's a big lot. It's
Right.
not a 1 acre thing. So it's, there's no reason to be pushing out of bounds and looking for,
but they haven't given a resolution on that one yet.
I know, I'm just saying.
They closed the hearing, so they have all the things that we had.
Right.
But I think that, my personal opinion, and I think the town board should get together with the planning board, with the zoning board, and the town the engineer,
Yeah.
town,
Governor,
no, Joe Fenoro should be one, and also Reed Karen
attorney.
to be on, from the
Building department.
denial letter.
Right.
They don't list that in the denial letter. They go only by 129 and not by the zoning, because zoning is where it is listed under 133. And when my experience as an engineer, which I'm no longer practicing, but we looked at all sections of the code. There's a, like when New York City has a New York City electrical code, but they follow the state code. You look at the state code, you look at the environmental code. Anytime we did a project, all the codes that applied to the project had to be looked at. It wasn't you took one section. And at that meeting, they said, we only look at 129. Now this is wetlands. Wetlands is mentioned in several sections of the code, and it has several different sections, excavations in the wetlands. That's another section, irrigation. All this has to do, it's not one section of the code. So I think they make a good point, but I think the town board is responsible. Okay, we had this from the planning board, and we have this from the CAC, and we have this from the building department. What do we think? That's why I thought it should be by the board, not by an individual committee. Those three committees should be considered, and then you can get the green committee in there. We can have every committee give the advice to the town board, and then they say, well, we got all this advice, this is great. Now, make a decision.
Well, especially on the more difficult, more complicated applications, that the more information you have, the better decision you can make.
Yeah.
The other thing I would recommend is that from chairman to chairman, that chair people, that you represent the committee, you and Mark, your co-chairs,
Right.
represent this committee, that you sit down with Ian or zoning people, whoever, just like I can interact with the liaison. I'm not a liaison to any of those committees that you mentioned, but surely if you would like me to go down and say, Jim, could you talk to the liaison, of the planning board and see if, I think we're just trying to improve communication, trying to do the right thing, trying to make the most intelligent decision to safeguard the environment. So,
That's what we're talking.
And that's
But, I mean,
not tricky.
sorry,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
without knowing the reasons why they approved, it's sort of a conversation in a vacuum.
Mhm.
As a gremium that is not elected but appointed, I think they can't make their own policy. That's would at least be that's sort of a common tradition in democratic politics. So they follow the code. If they don't, and then there are reasons based on the code that they should be able to provide why they approved that. And then there's an attachment point for argument, which should be before they close the process. But so far in the paper, I've only seen you read the code wrong. Well, that's A, not an argument, and B, tell me why I'm reading it wrong. But the thing, the white elephant in the room for me, being new to this, and if I'm just looking from the outside, there is a planning board, and the chair of the planning board is an architect who submitted a project that is doubtful whether it complies with code, recludes himself, excuses himself, and as number two, pushes it through, for lack of a better word, unless that person tells me what his arguments were. That I read the code wrong, and I mean we, is not an argument. So the white elephant in the room is a huge conflict of interest in the setup of that gremium, which every first law school class would tell you that's not flying anywhere. At least not if you expect a democratic institution to function.
Well,
And I think that's a big concern, and that's not just my concern. I think a lot of people who are looking at this are saying, okay, that's another one. They're pursuing
is.
business. And these two particular projects are really hard to overlook because they really look like someone is pushing an agenda, and it's the wrong people pushing the agenda. It just creates an impression, and I'm not saying they do. But if I look at the interest of the town of Shelter Island and the integrity of our community, then it looks questionable, just at the face of it. There might be good explanations for everything, but so far we haven't heard them. That's my biggest concern with this. Because it sort of delegitimizes everything. We can be sitting here and talk until the cows come home. If that's how it works, then there's probably a better TV show.
I think we should make a motion that the building department, CAC, planning board, and the other committee has something to do with the environment, which would be the green committee, if they want, get together in a room and with the town board, with the supervisor, and discuss it, and maybe see what the difference is. Maybe they have a reason. I don't know. I don't see it. And we don't see it because we voted 6-0 against it.
Right.
It's two sections of the code that apply to wetlands. And they at that meeting said, no, we only do 129. And they were adamant about that. And I think that's incorrect. To be so narrow-minded not to look at other parts of the code.
Right.
The question to you, Howard, is a practical one. Do you try to pursue that with the current town board in the last couple of months? Or do you wait till January and wait for the new administration?
Well,
Because you could get one, you could say one thing. Remember, 60% of the town board is changing. Amber's definitely coming back in one capacity or
Right,
another.
right.
And Mega's coming back.
it's coming back.
But there are 3 other seats that are gonna be wide open. So
Well,
whatever you
opinions
agree to
possibly.
in November or December may change in January based on who gets elected. So, again, I'm not looking to put it off. I'm good for the next, I'll do whatever you want to do. But, it's just something to think about practically.
It's a good idea what you have, and as long as we don't have to act on any wetlands until then, I agree. But if I'm gonna act on wetlands, I'm an environmentalist. I don't care what, and I'm a code person as an engineer. And the code says nothing, that the 133.12F3, I think it is. I said it so many times, I almost think I remember it, that no building in 100 feet. And they're saying if it's a error in the code, it should be corrected immediately. It shouldn't be wait 6 months, see who decides, if that's really the opinion. Now, I don't know why the zoning board, where it's listed in 133, doesn't act on that section of the code. I don't understand that, but I haven't talked to the zoning board, so I don't know. But I've heard that they really don't want to be involved.
I've heard you, and I will share this with my colleagues, your concerns, and try to get back to you with something.
Does the committee agree with what I'm saying? I mean, so we take a vote that we go for getting together with the town board and the people, and
Well, I think at least the planning board,
planning board, we had to sit down with, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's all.
But
I think that might be.
Start with that.
Start with that. See how it goes.
That's where I would go.
Yeah, start with one and then
Yeah,
move from there.
how should we do that then?
A joint meeting.
yeah.
Just,
Either gonna have the whole committees to get together, or the chairman get together. I think probably the whole committee getting together.
The majority of the committee should be there, right? We all have different opinions, that's
right.
why there's 7 of us,
Right.
I mean, and they have a good committee, they have an engineer, they have an attorney, they have an architect, and, Ian's got ethics, all professionals. State of New York, and they have to have errors and omissions insurance to operate and stuff. I mean, it's a serious, he's not taking this lightly,
Listen, how about this recommendation? The economy of time and energy, because you're mentioning their attorney, they have scheduled meetings. Take a look at their meeting schedules, see if you can get the majority of your committee together for that. Ask Ian, could I be put on the agenda? Like at the beginning of the agenda, show up at the meeting. We're asking for 20 minutes to share some of our thoughts and our concerns. Come in prepared. I would have a list of things that you pass around to the other people, have a spokesman that's going to speak to these issues and share that with them. That's the way I would go. Short, concise, attend. If you wanted me to be there, I would be happy to attend as a liaison with you guys. Whatever you guys are in charge, I'll do whatever you would like, but that would be my recommendation. See when the planning board meeting is, get a group of people that feel strongly about this, and you have a group that feels fairly strongly about this, contact Ian. We would like a short part of your agenda. I would like it at the beginning of the agenda. I have 3 or 4 committee members that would like to come in. We have a thing that'll take me 5 minutes to present, and then we can have a discussion for 10 minutes on this issue, a little exchange of ideas, and that's all I'm asking for.
I agree with you in one way, but I did that at that meeting. I said, Ian, who do I talk to about this? And he said, well, you have to bring it up to the town board. So it's the town board. And he said it at the meeting, and you take a look at the meeting.
So I'll bring this up tomorrow. We don't have a town board meeting,
No,
but we have a budget meeting. And we'll probably go into some type of executive session on something. I will ask my colleagues, they'll all be there tomorrow, if what I just mentioned would be feasible, advisable, or whatever, and I'll get your phone call right back.
it would have to be a separate meeting because not the planning board's general meeting. I don't want that because he said it at that meeting. And members of the committee said they only follow 129.
Okay.
That's it.
So I don't know I think it's Amber that's the liaison to the planning board. I'm not certain about that, but
Again,
yeah, well, so they'll all be there.
I think she is, actually.
Let me play it step by step. Would you want a separate meeting? Could we go to a regular meeting? Would you make that happen? Work with Ian, but whatever it turns out, we'll work on that, and I'll get some type of response back to you guys within the next couple of days.
that's
Okay.
okay, I agree with that. All right, so we brought up our objections and we'll see what happens. Okay, Dan, I know we mentioned the invasive plants and we're working on that list still. As soon as we can get that out, it'd be great, some sort of write-up, where we have the pictures and everything.
Yeah. I mean, we have all that stuff already. We just need someone to put it all
Somebody put
together.
it together, right, so.
Yeah.
I know you're busy, you have your own business, you have A lot of things, I appreciate. I have more time than anybody in this room because I'm retired, so I mean, I sympathize with you people, so.
Yeah, and a
I appreciate
1-year-old, so that's.
The CAC article, I have to talk to Roxanne about that because now that the planning board has taken it over, we have to rewrite that article slightly. And I think we should take our names off and say the present committee, whatever committee it is. So it doesn't have to be changed every, let's see, I forget, have you been approached, Dan, with the new, was it that, it was me, you were, Mark hasn't replied to the town yet whether he's gonna be a member. I don't know if you, are you?
For what?
For the
Member for-
committee?
For this committee?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I have the paperwork.
you have the paper.
Yeah, it's done, filled out.
Oh, okay, just give it to Amber.
Yeah, I just have to give it to her.
Great.
It's in my truck.
So are you going to, you?
Yeah.
Are you serve again?
Yep.
That's good. So that's very helpful because we need you on.
Yeah, I have it in my truck. It's just I haven't seen her sometimes.
Okay.
Shelter Island, you bump into somebody every day
Yeah, I
and then you
know.
don't see them for a month.
Maybe if you saw her at the post office.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's true, okay. Pesticides, Mark isn't here, we're working on that, we're also working on that, as we did at the Water Advisory Committee meeting today, you know, the application of pesticides, and we had a meeting with the Water Advisory Committee, and we had different people there from each committee talking about it. It was sponsored by them, and they're having another meeting, I forget what the date is on that, but there'll be one, and I'll be at that one also, where we discuss it with the landscapers. Walter Richards was there, he mentioned what he does and have certification of spraying and when we spray. And and I know the town has a no spray thing with the county. They can't come over and spray everything, I know that, so they don't treat us like that, so we gotta get on that one. Jim, you're up next.
Find something for you right here.
Okay. Well, maybe we should see, let's go to the people on the Zoom if they have anything. Pam, do you have anything to add to our meeting? Pam,
Yeah,
is
hi,
still
Howard,
there?
everybody. Yeah, hi.
Good evening.
You know, I would absolutely agree with you, Howard, having this special meeting with the town board, the planning board, and the zoning board, because I agree with you. Following wetlands applications, how many times the zoning board has said, well, we don't want to get involved with that. But, you know, technically, the shoreline is the rear setback, which would then be the 75-foot buffer or the 100-foot regulated area. And they really have been ignoring these things. I can recall bringing up this wetlands regulated area on another project at one time. And the discussion ensued that someone wanted to put in a retaining wall about 150 feet across the back of their property and build in a pool and all of this. And I said, you know, this is in the regulated area. What are we regulating if it isn't 150 foot of retaining wall? And I really never got an answer to that. And I really am thankful to you and this committee for making this a true issue, because it seems to be coming up very often, and you are a state sort of supported committee, council. You're not just a committee, you are a council. You do have some authority here, and I think that it really was a disgrace that the planning board did not accept your recommendations on either of these two projects. I would hope that we're not going to try to separate this out and say, well, you can talk to Reed and then we'll talk to, no, I think you're right that everyone should get together in the room. And it should be advertised for a public meeting so that the public can come and listen and hear what everyone on each separate board and council and committee have to say about it. So I just want to thank you for bringing this up, because I've been following these for a very long time now, and the wetlands are very important to Shelter Island, and they should be protected. So I appreciate it. And if you need help with that invasive plant list, let me know. I can put the pictures and the words together for you fellas. I've offered this more than one.
Maybe Dan, you
So,
should.
yeah,
that's
Dan,
what
if you need
Pam-
help.
See, take that. Thank you, Pam. we're working on it. We'll see what happens. I appreciate your help with all of that. And we'll get something done on this wetlands because I think there's a coastal meeting, isn't there, Jim? Something with coastal shoreline this week?
Yes, Wednesday, I'm having a meeting.
Everybody's invited, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's a,
It's a public meeting.
yeah, I think so.
So that's a good one that we should make sure we look at and see what it is, because that's what our coastline is changing every day. Not drastically, but a little bit. We get subsidence of the land going out and the saltwater intrusion into our properties and,
All right, so this is a perfect lead-in, if you can.
yeah, I'll be there.
Pam, thank you for all your comments. Lori Beer-Bremen, you have anything else that you want to add?
Yes, I too would like to thank you for discussing this tonight. Because in the last few months, many of the CAC's recommendations and reports seem to be disregarded, which is a little concerning. That it appears to some of the public that the role of the CAC has been diminished. And also, as Pam said, in some of those hearings, that nobody seems to want to touch 13312. The planning board punts it to the zoning board. The zoning board punts it back to the planning board, and both of those boards right now are saying it's not me. Well, if it's not me and it's in 133 and it's not the zoning board and it's not the planning board, then who is it that reviews that section? It's very disturbing what's going on. Anyway, the other thing that I just want to reiterate with what happened to the planning board meeting was, the public did try to alert the planning board that there was a problem with the Zoom and the recording, and the audience was ignored. The only communication that we were allowed was to raise our hand, and the planning board just went on and ignored all the raised hands. Otherwise, they would have known about it. And as Jim said, it could have been easily fixed by either just repeating those, few minutes and letting the public know what was discussed. But there was so many things that were covered and decided upon or voted upon, and there was a really kind of at least it felt like there was a lack of respect. Well, it's too bad you missed it. You could have been here in person, which is exactly what they told the public. Well, it's your fault because you weren't here in person. And that was just not very nice. And then at the end of the meeting, the chairman closed the meeting to the public, and then he could be heard saying, "Can the planning board members please stay after the meeting? I want to talk to you." So they continued the meeting after the public was dismissed with no announcement or no agenda for an executive session or a reason for it. And the Zoom audience again was cut off as well. And I don't know what happened in public because I wasn't there in person. But, that was also kind of disturbing that they were continuing some sort of discussion out of the public's view that makes you wonder, well, what were they talking about? There was no executive session plan. They didn't follow any of the open meeting laws. And the attorney was not very nice and basically told the public that, well, you could have been here in person and the meeting wasn't advertised by a Zoom. Well, it's all over the town website as being advertised as Zoom or in person. So, the whole thing was just a lack of disrespect for the public. And it was just shocking. So anyway, I thank you for bringing that up and discussing it. And as I do agree with what Pam said, that it would be nice if everybody together and had some sort of discussion about all of this, and that the public was allowed to participate and view that, because so much is going on now that the public just doesn't feel, and I have to say, I feel that way too, that especially with the planning board, that they're just not listening, the eye rolling, the facial expressions, they look annoyed that you're even talking. And it's just not respectful. So anyway, that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Okay. All right, Jim, I don't see anybody else on. Could you kind of
Yes, sir.
comments?
So, yeah, just two things. The first one I gave you is on protecting trees and vegetation subcommittee. We had our first organizational meeting on Tuesday, October 3rd at 6 o'clock here at Town Hall. Tim Pertel is the chairperson for that, Green Options. Ann Clark represents the CAC, Sean Davey represents the public, and I am the town board liaison for this committee. The minutes, Jim Colligan began by distributing individual folders to all the committee members, which I did, and I had done a lot of research on this before the meeting. I distributed what the town of Southhold does, East Hampton and Southampton, in terms of, and also what we have in our town code under chapter 117. We also mentioned that we wanted to get the Village of North Haven's code as being something that might be of value for Shelter Island. The second thing we did is Tim, if he would serve as the chairman, and we agreed on that. And the discussion items, very quickly, we defined the charge and scope of the committee. Sean felt that we should think big, and Dan felt that we might want to limit our scope initially. Obviously, this resulted in some very good conversation. Listed below are just some of the discussion items, and I think, I think it was a good discussion. Dan wanted to somewhat limited, and Sean wanted to think real big, but is this just for new construction? Does it include major renovations as well? What about vacant lots? Could something be done about new home purchases requiring a mandated tree inventory? B, is this something that would fall under the town's building department to manage? What about enforcement? C, would this include tree toppings, not just tree removal, but topping of trees, which seems to be an ongoing issue as well? Dan pointed out this is sometimes a suggested practice to promote healthy, and certain species to tree top, as you explained to the committee. But obviously, some people are doing it for other reasons, just to improve a view of the water view. So,
Which is all species dependent.
right. Would the town have an appointed arborist that would perform specified duties to help perform specific duties to better manage tree preservation for the town? Would this be strictly something that a homeowner would have to deal with? Who would pay for that? Is that a town responsibility? Would the homeowner pick up that responsibility? Lots of talk about tree species and the caliber size of tree species, and Dan is an expert in that area. What about the policy that requires remove and replace measure, which Dan brought up? You take a tree down, you replace that tree. What type of tree would you replace it with? Dan has a great deal of experience in property/tree management, and shared some of his experiences that he did with other members of the committee, which I thought was very, very helpful. Even tying himself to a tree there is, trying to protect some white oak that's older than Jim Colligan, so that's pretty damn old. Another one was some discussion about promoting additional educational information to the public concerning tree preservation. Tim mentioned that he has done this in the past, the articles for Shelter Island Reporter. Could real estate and/or builders and architects play a more vital role? And we think yes, in promoting tree preservation and encourage more native plants, especially on new home sites or major reservation sites as well. Enforcement is always going to be the key factor. How aggressive do we want to be? That's, again, whether we want to limit our scope initially and expand it over the course of time, because it's only as good as enforcement. So, if you take on too much initially and you can't enforce it all,
It's just gonna go right down.
it's gonna go right to hell. So we looked at what could we do prior to construction, actually coming in pre-construction, and do a tree survey. What would we recommend during construction in order, Dan has talked about this, where trucks come too close to the edge of roots and compact the soil and do damage to the tree without hitting the tree, but still can damage the tree because of compacting soils and things like that. And what would we do as a follow-up after the home has been major renovation or new home put in? Would there be a follow-up to see that whatever plan that was approved was in fact gonna go on, you know, that they were actually gonna plan what they said they were gonna plan. So that was the first meeting. These are bits and pieces of the notes. I don't know if I got it all, you know, but yeah, but I'm a note taker.
Sounds pretty good.
So I tried to take as many notes as possible. The second item is on coastal resilience, nature-based solutions. So this Wednesday, we changed the time, it's now 11 o'clock AM, not 12 o'clock. So it's 11 AM to 1 PM, it's 2 hours. So PEP is coming, that's the Peconic Estuary Partnership. And they're coming with, you know, some people from PEP, they're also coming from somebody from one of the other big committees that are involved with exactly what the term says, coastal resilience, nature-based solutions. So they have, the TNC actually has developed a new app for marsh restoration. And it takes a look at, there's a website on their mapping tool. It looks at helping communities understand the vulnerability of coastal hazards. It helps to reduce their risk and determine what value of nature-based solutions are at your fingertips. It's a main function served as a mapping tool. There are 6 attributes that get within this grid. So what they want you to do is they want you to go around the island, select different marsh areas, identify those marsh areas, define them, how big they are. Maybe they're 1 square mile, maybe less, maybe slightly more. And you look at it. Number 1, total marsh acreage. Number 2, dredged lagoon, how many acres are actually dredged? Number 3, acres of linear ditching. Number 4, acres of edge that show edge erosion on the edges of the marsh. 5, the ratio of vegetation versus non-vegetated marsh within the marsh area. So is it 90% vegetated and 10% not, or is it the other way around? And then number 6 is the percentage of unvegetated marsh. So you rank order these all based on your findings. And additionally, you take a look at the composition and distribution of sediment types that are in the marsh area itself. And then you explore the feasibility of the beneficial uses of dredged materials for marsh restoration in an area of interest. So I'm thinking, like, we've talked about dredging before. Areas that need to be dredged, and there's a lot of creeks that need dredging. So you would go and take samples of those materials. Are they safe? Is there any hazardous material in there? If they were doomed safe, you would find areas in the marsh areas around Shelter Island that you could use these materials to help build up the marsh area to protect. Now, marshes serve as a multitude of functions. But one of the big functions that marsh areas or wetlands is protecting it during storms. So what they're looking at, obviously, the pendulum is swinging from big fortified structures of bulkheads, groins, rock walls and things like that to get to a more natural base. Why? Number 1, they're cheaper. Number 2, they're easier to and you can solve other problems by doing it. So what I did was I listed, and I'm not going to go through all these. There were 6 different projects that started back in 2015. That was this was the Office of Coastal Management, and the first one was a Cape Cod Commission. I'll go through the first one. So the applicant was Cape Cod Commission. The recommended federal funding was $522,348 in 2015. So that would probably be about a $700,000 bill today. The matching funds were $258. The Cape Cod Commission and partners will undertake a public planning process to improve community understanding of climate change impacts, sea level rise scenarios, and various adaptation strategies. So basically, it's getting Cape Cod to focus in on that. So that is part of the coastal resilience natural base. It starts by spending some money by looking at how best to do that. Obviously, there is stuff done in Maine. There was stuff done in New Hampshire. New Hampshire has a very small coastline on the Atlantic Ocean, about maybe 25, 30 miles, but they applied for one. Rhode Island had one where they were taking down some they were to increase the salt marsh surface elevations and restore natural marsh hydrology by placing a thin layer of sediment across 30 acres of degraded marsh. So these are things that we could do here.
So you're talking about the silty stuff that kills the creeks, using that and spreading that over in the marsh?
Perhaps you have to do an analysis on it first. I mean, I'm coming Wednesday.
That won't kill the marsh though, will it?
No, that's what I'm saying. No, I'm saying you would have to look at that.
Right.
They'd have to do sediment testing.
Yeah, you'd have to do all that
Yeah.
testing.
Before you
You'd have to
build
do all that
water.
testing beforehand.
Right. How would that help the grass though? I mean, is it,
I mean, they would probably replant plugs, I would say.
right, I mean, could you take that silt and build a marsh?
That's the purpose.
shoreline.
Of today's meeting, though. I did this very quickly watching, two grandchildren over the weekend.
Right.
So I put down a bunch of different projects that have been funded, federally funded, to the tune of $250,000 to $750,000, to help explore that. I think what PEP is doing is PEP is going to visit the 5 East End towns, and they're going to say, introduce you to this concept and say, here's how you go about it. Get a grant application, pick an area, so sit down, do an analysis of your different marsh areas and select one and put in for a grant application and work it through. So I think I think that's, again, I only get an email that was a paragraph long on what they were gonna do.
Right.
But I put 2 and 2 together, and I think this is exactly what they're asking us to do.
Right.
I know the Conic Estuary Partnership is dead set against the hardening of shorelines. They're working the exact opposite. They're trying to convince people to stay totally away from that and work on natural shorelines, living shorelines as they call them. And that's really real point. We become that experiment of what we would do. We selected something back in 2017 that exactly meets this criteria that would cause, building up the spine, eastern shoreline, higher sand, cobbles, 16 inches thick by 70 feet wide, angled down, and maybe a series of just low groins down low, but it would break up the wave action, hold the sand in place. You still have to pull maintenance, but you wouldn't be dredging every year to the tune of $100,000 or $500,000 on a hydraulic dredge. You would save the taxpayers of Suffolk County over $2 million in a 10-year period by putting in a natural shoreline on Real Point. But you could pick anything. You could pick Shell Beach, you could pick all the creeks. To be honest with you, the TNC, I've said this before I leave office, I tried to say to the new lady from, what's her name, Trace,
In Mashamak, yeah.
Cody, yes, to Cody, they've been for 20 years now, 17 years to be exact. They've been doing a study on the impact of sea rise on Bass Creek.
Right.
Now, the creek is changing over the course of 17 years. It's adapting to the rising shoreline.
Right.
Come in and explain to us. That would be a perfect fit for us to be able to, find out what's going on there. So we have a better understanding how we could improve, encourage our marsh areas to improve on a quicker basis to combat sea rise and.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the sea actually rose like a foot within 5 years, all those marshes would die because they'd be underwater the whole time.
Right, they're talking about a 6 inch over the course of 2050, 2060. That's the moderate.
No, I understand it, but I'm just saying,
You take a look-
I'm wondering if that would kill the marshes.
Well.
If you had-
We have seen it
I know.
when those, they get closed in and water gets trapped in there.
Right.
It kills them completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Dickinson Creek was a prime example. Under the road, when that thing got clogged and you looked.
Yep. Oh, it was all dead.
Right near Edmonds property.
Right.
You look inside there, it was black.
Yep.
It was just absolutely black.
Right.
You came back after they opened it all up.
Yeah.
You got that flushing in and out of there,
Came right back to life.
right back to life within like months.
Yeah.
It didn't take years.
So that's why you need to put a pipe out at
Well, yes.
what's their, yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the things.
And Rackins Creek.
These are the things you're talking about.
Right.
But you can't do it on now, we're
Right.
gonna be in here about the town budget. You know,
Yeah.
it's got to, you have to get federal funding and state funding and county funding to get these projects done. You can't do them all at once. But the idea is, I think they're gonna come in and say, identify your top 3 or 4 projects.
But the thing is,
That over the course of the next decade
Right.
and work on it. We know, for instance, we want to raise the plazas. We've already done that. We work with the North and South Ferry to build up the ramps and the, you know, and the next thing is the plazas. Now we'll identify roads. So we have money in the budget next year to take a look at Ram Island Road. And that's just the architectural stuff. That's the design work. It's not the actual work. But you got to get the project shovel ready. When you get it shovel ready, then you apply for a grant. And hopefully, you know, because raising that, you know, raising Ram Island Road up could cost you a few bucks. You know, it may cost you several $1 million. Well, where do we get that money from? You get it shovel ready, you apply for the grant, it may come back that it's a 75-25, you say, is it worth it? Hey, listen, it's, you pay me now or pay me later. We can't just put 2 inches of tar on something and say we've solved the problem. It takes engineering. When you raise a road up 18 inches, you know, like so, it takes engineering. You can't just put the road up and have a fall off.
Right.
So it's a little complicated on how we do this. But I would like to think that we have to have both things in mind. Raising roads, but how do we protect those roads? You know, how do we protect those bays and creeks and marshes? How do we do it naturally? Because obviously you can't be building stuff around it. We have to have a better understanding if there are natural-based solutions to these problems. Let's try them. Let's try one, see if it works. You know, and apply for some grant monies to get it done.
Right.
So that's kind of the pitch between the 2 committees that we're working on. So those are like the last 2 things that I'm really kind of involved with, other than getting this budget down to a reasonable amount of money. You know, and getting some other, obviously a couple other things done, but these are 2 things that I would like to see pushed into 2024 by the new, whoever takes over.
It's, you know, you got to take into consideration from an engineering standpoint, if you raise one road, like at the end of West Neck,
Yes,
that water is going to go someplace else. It's going to spread through that whole bay.
sure.
Right now it goes over. So now what about the properties adjacent that you build it back?
You hit the nail right on the head, because if you raised up West Neck Road right near Hilo
Right.
and just raised that road up, and the water would have to go somewhere, it would flood over into Hilo.
Hilo,
I mean, in those low areas, when you
Yeah.
first go in there, that would be underwater. You know, that would be underwater. That's a floodplain anyhow to begin with.
right.
But that's all part of the engineering and looking at these things.
And maybe you'll have to let some pipe go underneath and flood it. It's a whole engineering problem.
Yeah, it is. That it is. But it should guide decision-making in terms of building too in these areas.
Definitely, and
You know, it should-
wetlands.
yeah, again, the wetlands are wetlands. You gotta, they're only gonna get wetter. They're not getting drier.
Exactly.
The water's coming in, so.
Yeah, the thing is that pipe down on Midway Road was a super simple, inexpensive thing to do that totally solved the problem.
It did.
So rather than making a big McGill out of some of these things, like the one down on Highbury Lane, that's another simple problem
Correct. I
to
agree.
fix without having to go through the
I
whole
brought this up
muckety muck,
three,
you
4
know?
years ago when it first happened. I said,
Right.
To me, I'm not an engineer, but this to me, it goes in one end out, you get a flow, nice flow.
Yeah, or just, that pipe would just come in and out,
Yeah,
you know, and,
but it would stay open.
right.
I mean,
And let it close at the other end, it doesn't matter anymore.
right.
And let that beach just build back up and do
Correct.
its thing or whatever.
Correct.
But
Good.
Anyway,
All right, that's it for me.
okay.
All right, old business, we went through it, the articles that we have to do and stuff like that. New business, we're gonna get a revised proposed meeting dates. Catherine's gonna hand us out when she talks to Christina.
For next year, you mean?
Yeah, for next year, because we wanna plot it out so the planning board sees what we do like a week or so before.
Right.
And that's one of the problems with all our projects is that the engineers and architects working on the island do not come with a pre-plan, like a preliminary plan. Years ago in engineering, you always did a preliminary plan, then you did your design plan, then you had a check plan before it went to the public.
Right.
Today, everybody's got a computer. Oh, kid, I can change that quick. I can change that quick. And they're not doing it thorough, my opinion.
Right.
That they're not doing a thorough job. So besides any of these projects, I think we have to inform the architects.
There should be a checklist that they pick up at the building department of all the stuff that they have to comply with before they even start.
Well,
I would think.
the first thing is the code, but as the code, some committees, the planning committee for one, says that things aren't what they're written as, they're miswritten. I don't believe that. I think we tried to get as many code things to protect our coast as we have. That's why it's in the zoning, and that's why it's in basic 129.
Right.
It's in 2 places minimum, and I bet I could find other places in the code on irrigation and stuff like that, but that's another thing. The other new business that I wanted to do, I handed out, or she made copies for everybody of our nature preserve areas. And, during the next colder months, when the ticks sort of die down a little, we could walk those, and anytime you walk it, just write down a little note, we'll put it into the minutes, and then eventually we'll issue that to the town, that we have to do that every year. And you used to do it as a separate list that I gave out, but then we started just including it in the minutes of meetings.
Right.
So I think we go back to having a separate list that we look at. And everybody doesn't have to go to every one, but we have to cover everyone. And this year I'm going to try to go see Cody and see what their plans are. Because they have a plan, and for some reason it's on our preservation. Whether it was approved by the town or whatever, I'm not sure. So I want to see their plan. So I'll go up to see her one day. I'll try to make an appointment. All right? Anybody else have any?
Yeah, I do. Turkey pox, what's the deal?
Turkey pox.
I've seen plenty of it.
I've seen some dead turkeys around that I haven't ever seen before.
Bad in the center of town right now.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
I don't know what's going
Where
on.
did it come from and how did it,
I was told it's transmitted by mosquitoes. This is what I've been told.
I think they call it turkey pox.
yeah,
It's very highly contagious between the birds. I
right,
don't think it affects anybody else, but it will affect like your chickens and stuff.
right.
Yeah, that's what I've been told.
Okay.
I haven't done any extensive research on it, but
Jim, I keep wanting to ask again, the mosquito commission, I haven't seen them around for like years. Have you seen them, the white truck with it?
No, I haven't really.
So I mean, are they just like bailing out on us or what?
I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, they used to come to my pond and they put the little.
dip,
Yeah, they
check
check
the larvae
a
and.
couple times a year and they just haven't been around. So,
I'm wondering if we can look into this a little bit.
yeah, but I mean, that thing with the turkeys, that's really bad. A lot of people here have chickens and it's just like, where does something like that come from?
Bird flu is terrible.
Yeah, well, this is a whole different thing. It's really,
More
So
devastating.
it obviously, so they're so similar, turkeys and chickens, that it does have the same.
I guess that's what I've been told. Yeah, I'm not.
yeah, what do they get like?
It's like really nasty, like sores and blisters.
Right, yeah.
Hope it doesn't
Really
affect the
disgusting.
quail.
Yeah, I hope not.
Who knows?
You would think that it might. because
It might.
They're right in the similar
Yeah.
species there, you
And they're
know?
right in the same forage too.
Right.
Right around these.
So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see.
Some things affect like was it the West Nile, the crows would die from it. And
Yeah.
The health department would test the crows a lot for that, but then who knows if this stuff transfers over, everything seems to be
Who knows?
mutant.
Yep.
I don't know.
All right, our next meeting is November 13th, and I say we take a vote to adjourn this meeting.
Yep.
Second. Everybody
Sure.
Adjourned.
adjourn. Thank
See you later.
everybody.